Thank you, Dimi, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You are a bureau member of the LIMEC, the European Liberal Youth, and then you wrote a chapter in our publication, Building Freedom. This publication was on liberal solutions for the housing crisis.
Mm-hmm.
From your position at LIMEC, you have quite a view on the youth position when it comes to housing. In your chapter, you used the expression generation without a choice. Can you explain us a little bit what do you mean by that? What did you mean by that, and then how housing affects the freedom of young people?
Absolutely. So the concept of generation without a choice is something that we named quite specifically. Because for us, when we think about stepping into adulthood, what's the first thing you think of? It's obviously moving out of your parents' house, moving out from wherever you grew up, exploring what the world has to offer. But if your choices get limited due to the amount of costs you have to endure, then it's not freedom anymore. Because if we think about it, when I wanted to start university, I was not able to move far abroad when it comes to maybe moving to Berlin, moving to Munich, moving to any other big European city. So I had to stay where I lived, in a non-metropolitan region where there was just one university. And while this is a great university, it severely impacts me because it's a gatekeeper of freedom in the end if you cannot choose housing freely and move where you want to be in the world.
Actually, just quite recently, I had a conversation with an old friend of mine, and he mentioned that his daughter is studying in the Netherlands, in Leiden, and then, of course, we know how the housing crisis is really affecting, especially young people in the Netherlands. And then he mentioned that she had an opportunity to go to Japan for a short scholarship, but she had to turn it down because she was afraid that if she gets back her apartment in the Netherlands, then she wouldn't have a place to stay after she comes back. So I think it's really a very good example how housing is affecting young people's life choices and then and possibilities when it comes to a scholarship or a job or any kind of life experience.
And we see that quite a lot also when it comes to our bubble, so the liberal youth. To give you some context, in 2024, we actually did a big survey and a campaign on emancipation. So what does youth want to do when they grow up? What are the means that they have? And the biggest pressing issue was actually housing, especially when it comes to these points. Because a lot of the youth that we had participating in the survey, we had round about 300 participants. Most of them actually mentioned that they declined opportunities because of their living situation. Whether it is a study abroad program, like you said, or maybe not being able to participate in an internship because you will lose a place at the student housing you have. That is such a valid concern for so many people and not just your friend's daughter.
You also highlight in this chapter intergenerational fairness. We see that maybe housing problem affecting young people and maybe older generations differently also, although it's of course a problem for everyone. But what does it mean for you, intergenerational fairness, and how does it affect our society?
Yeah. I can give you a very personal issue on that. So I'm 25 and I moved back home. When my parents were 25, they owned the house we live in. And this for me brings it down. When it comes to emancipation, when it comes to housing, when it comes to having something you can call your own space, this is limiting us. And it's not just limiting us in the aspect of not having your four walls, but it begins from there. So for example, us as the young people, I really feel like we're starting our step into adulthood much, much later than, for example, my parents' generation did. And at the end of the day, yes, it comes down to it. If I want to start a family now, I would have to think about, can I afford to get married? Can I afford to have a family? And can I afford to house my family in the, for example, metropolitan area where I want to live? And that's just one kind that's just one side of the coin. The other side, if we look at it, it's also when it comes to intergenerational fairness. If I also think about what can we as young people also offer the older generation, it's a lot of times, taking care of our relatives. It's taking care of our families. And again, these things are not possible if we don't have a safe and secure place to live. Now, if we scale that up for a moment and think about it, The way our systems are structured are obviously, in my case coming from Germany, I pay for the pension of the older people. And if you put that into this whole abstract concept of, is that fair? And what am I getting in return? Not having a place on my own, paying 700 euros for a tiny single room in the center of Düsseldorf, that's not really fair for a lot of people. So we really have to think about not just in the aspect of how can students afford housing, how can young people afford to move out, we also have to think about how can we make this whole system much fairer than we have right now.
I see. Let's talk about solutions.
Yes, please.
So we always use the expression Europe needs more bricks. And in our publication, we actually argue that we need much more than just regulation to solve this issue. And then actually we have to build more affordable homes. What is your take? What do you think could be the solution for solving this housing crisis that we're in?
We definitely agree. When we did our analyses and we looked into what do we as youth recommend for a policy, building more affordable housing is definitely the key to us. So building things fast, building things that last, and also building things that are sustainable are definitely the three main components for us to basically accelerate this issue. Also, if we look into home ownership, how, for example, loans are being given, young people are severely discriminated against because obviously you don't have the same job security when you're 25 to 30 as someone who's been in a career for 20 years. Another thing that I would definitely love to highlight is when it comes to how do we give houses and how can housing be more affordable. This aspect of discrimination I just mentioned is not just an ageism concept, where you go to the bank and they tell you, I hate to break it to you, you're too young. But we also see it with a lot of people that, for example, are refugees or belong to the LGBTQ community. They have it significantly harder to get their own place and to get their own ability to live somewhere on their own simply because of where they're from and who they choose to love. And for us, this is not okay. So yes, while we definitely need to focus on the aspect of building faster and accelerating things, we also have to look at the aspect, again, is it fair and do we have to change discrimination laws for that?
Housing is actually more of a national competence, but we are the European Liberal Forum, and then you are working for the European Liberal Youth. What Europe and the European cooperation can do in this sense?
I mean, we said it already with a question, but for us, the European competency is definitely, one of the solutions to that. Because if we look at how the way youth moves and how many options we have due to the programs we have in the European Union, it goes without saying that if you offer something on an EU level, you also have to take care of the problems on an EU level. And for us, one of the things is definitely looking into how do we plan housing in urban areas. We have some of the best universities in Europe. And so many people move there, not just obviously the European students, but also students from all over the world. Why has no one sat down with the experts, with the urban planners, and thought about how can we accommodate all of those young people coming to make sure that they give it their best at university and can focus on that without having to sleep in tents for weeks, like, for example, they did in the Netherlands this last year. I mean, I was shocked when I looked at the news and I saw these yellow tents they have at Mount Everest at a train station in the Netherlands. So for us, again, this European competency is definitely one of the things when it comes to planning, but also with the other side I mentioned when it comes to laws and anti-discrimination laws, that is something to be implemented for us on a European level that then needs to be broken down on a national level, obviously.
If I may, I would have a last question.
Yeah.
Why do you think liberals should deal with this topic? It's many times we talk about when we talk about housing, we associate this topic to the left, maybe to the Greens, maybe not that much the liberal political family, but it's actually an important topic. Why do you think liberal politicians and liberal politics should deal with this, and how does this affect our liberal society?
For me, the first answer to that lies in the question we spoke about when it comes to the European competency. I really believe that us as liberals, we are the ones thinking about how can Europe solve the housing crisis. And for us, finding the competencies there and finding which experts we can rely on, that is definitely a unique selling point as to why liberals should focus on this and continue to do it. And then obviously, what for me as a liberal just screams the essence of liberalism is, if we speak about home ownership and housing, we don't think about taking it from one side and putting it to the other. So for example, with the intergenerational thing, for me, it's not a huge politically incorrect topic to say that we have intergenerational unfairness, because I don't believe in taking from the older people and giving it to the young. But we believe in finding these solutions as liberals that last for a lifetime and for generations to come. And this is for me why housing is a key topic for liberals.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.